Hello, my name is Alex Morgan. I'm a commercial entrepreneurship student, but I heard that you were coming here today, so I wanted to come ask what what in your estimation is Russia's overall strategic aims? I know a lot of people focus on the Ukraine war, but we've seen Russia giving a nuclear weapon to Belarus. It seems like they're expanding their logistic capacity outside of Estonia. Um, they seem to be degraded in their capacity to wage the war in Ukraine from just years of grinding through. But what is the overall theory of mind for what they're trying to achieve strategically?
Yeah, I think strategically it is about regaining a sovereign territory, whether it's adjacent sovereign bits that are kind of glued together or whether it's one sovereign space, that's not the matter. So Belarus could continue to exist if it is, a proxy state, 100% controlled by Russia, but certainly Putin aims for reassuring and redefining the Russian Federation in terms of the territory and the political space of the former Soviet Union. That's where the whole thing starts. Because that's where, and here I'm convinced simply from the many interactions I was present with him, this is something that is the most fundamental failure, as he feels, in the history of Russian/Soviet leadership, that it fell apart. So it needs to be put together again. Now, that is a big problem because that would include the Baltic states, and the Baltic states are, probably the most strongly independent European states, and we act in solidarity. They're members of NATO. So, by the same token, this is challenging NATO. This is challenging the alliance area, and we need to kind of adjust to that specific threat. You can always say, I think there are three levels of confrontation. There's the first, which is the immediate confrontation between Russia and Ukraine, or the territorial issues that belong to it. Then there is a second level, which is the question of the future of the security order at the center of Europe, and that is what I just described. How far are the Russians able to move into it, to destabilize the existing security order? And the third, and that's very, very important, he would like to redefine himself at eye level in the bilateral relationship with the United States of America. So that third level is something where I, as a, let's say, as a negotiator, would think, this is the last thing I'm going to give him. I won't give him recognition in the bilateral relationship first step, because that is ultimately something which is very, very important, very complex and difficult anyways, because you will be looking at all the relevant disarmament agreements and arms control agreements between Russia and the United States. And that whole question, I still remember 2015 vividly. 2015 was the year when the Russians intervened in Syria, and we were all sitting at the United Nations, and the US delegation, and the commotion was amazing. There was for a quick second, I think, a moment where they were not sure whether they would intervene or not intervene and push the Russians out of Syria. In the end, they didn't, you didn't, the US didn't, and that has consequences. You find the Russians in Syria, you find the Russians in Libya, you find the Russians, and that's also a defeat for us because we were present with troops in Mali. If you look at the Sahel, the very center of Africa, those governments of Mali, Burkina Faso, all the way leading up to Chad, they moved away from, let's say, security assurances that were given by the US, that were given by us and by our French partners, and they very much bought Russian assurances or Russian military presence. So it has far-reaching consequences if you deal with them, and if you yield at one point in an early stage, it's very difficult to stop the flood afterwards. And my personal view is, because they have only very negative influence, not only on stability but also on development aspects for these countries. So we need to roll them back. I think that's also a job we need to do during the next 4 years. We need to put the Russians in the place where they belong. And that needs to be done at the same time. If, for instance, we were kind of fixing the reality in Ukraine proper at the expense of the Russians dancing, on the dance floor in Africa, in the Middle East, etc., that would be, not the kind of deal that would reflect our interests, I think, very clearly.